I am live. I have not been live in quite a while, and we'll see who shows up. The only reason I'm live today is because I'm kind of poking at getting going here again on Salt and Light, and I'm just doing the animation thing, so I figured I might as well live stream while I do it. So let's see. I was looking at where I am in the shell, and this doesn't have a soundtrack yet. So we've got this situation with this character here, Salud. I was cleaning up after Golek, and then Golek shows up. So that's the situation. Now this is the original storyboard, kind of rough. So Salud is saying something. I don't have the script up. I probably should, but he's like, "Oh, Golek, so how was the wedding? It must have been just wonderful seeing the prince and blah blah blah." And Golek's like, "Enough with your incessant prattling." Okay, so that's the basic situation. So let's go back here to Krita and see what we've got. So I opened up actually the storyboard here so I could just kind of see what I have. And then I jumped over to scene 3-26. So this is Salt and Light episode 3. Well, scene, I guess it'd be scene 26. So, quick check of some items on my YouTube. Okay. Just making sure that the live stream's working properly. Cool. So, let us get busy. One thing I noticed, I made it, oops. Let me just double check this. Yeah, okay, cool. Probably should be in B mode for the brush. Yes, I made a note to myself that probably Salud's mustache should jump around like a dee kind of thing. That would be cool. So, blink blink. How was the wedding? Okay, so I like what I'm seeing. I'm gonna have to add the lip sync, obviously. Make sure I got the right brush going here. Oh, wait a second. I actually don't want to change my brush. Okay, so I have a brush that, let me see here. When I press lightly, I guess I'll go back. It doesn't matter. Let me do this again. So I'm going to switch to a different brush and then back to this one. And this should be my normal brush. So when I sketch, it's red. And when I press hard, the line actually thins out a little bit and gets black. That allows me to ostensibly put the pencil test and ink on the same layer, kind of in real time. The jury is still out, actually, on whether that's turned out to be a good idea. So there it is. So what is today? Today is the 16th of April. It's Sunday. And so far there's nobody here, which doesn't surprise me. I haven't been really live streaming in quite some time. Okay, now this is interesting. Oh, I see. So, are we in solo mode? We are. Okay. I'm sitting here turning this layer off and wondering why it won't turn off. Well, if you're in isolate layer mode, is I think what Krita calls it, isolate active layer, then even if you turn it off, you can still see it. So that would explain that little anomaly. So I'm just going in here and touching up Salud's his headdress. And I'm trying to apply good animation practice here in the sense of really make sure the individual contours are, that I'm honoring the drawing such as it is. I've had a tendency in the past to have, this is probably common for animators, but the proclivity to have things seemingly change size inexplicably as you animate, pose to pose. Now, there is a fairly intelligent safeguard against such things, and which is probably something I should recommend here strongly. Let me put this up on top, and we'll just call this arcs. So what you can do is, I'm not going to insert an animation keyframe, because I'm basically just saying, okay, here's his hat. Now if we go forward, unfortunately, since this layer doesn't have any animation, it can't go forward. So I have to actually have a animated layer selected. Okay, and now if I jump back up to the arcs, this really should probably be about there. And let's just keep going. Yeah, something like that. So what I'm marking here is the top of the hat, or the, okay, and so if this is the basic size there, so, I mean, obviously you could achieve the same thing with onion skins. Obviously, I'm not a huge onion skin fan. I avoid them most of the time. So as you can see, the concept here is just say, well, we've got this arc layer that's guiding us, so we can just, doesn't always work, but actually, I mean, usually when people think of arcs, they're thinking of like a joint, like an arm moves on an arc, that sort of thing, which is true, but even the animation of, globby shapes like this can, it's still helpful for sure to think of the arcs, especially because, here's another thing. Let's unsolo that layer. Having this indication here probably wouldn't be the worst idea in the world, right? If I was drawing the whole character, and I'm going to turn that down actually a little bit. Get kind of soft. Go back to the pencil test layer. And it just keeps you on track in terms of how things are positioned. So it isn't just arcs that, as far as articulated arcs of motion. Well, anyway, all motion is on arcs. But the technique I'm showing here is not actually all that incredibly useful for this particular shot. And being at 8 frames a second, by the way, I don't expect, yeah, I don't like that. GE to go into erase mode with the freehand path tool and just get rid of it. Okay, so now his headdress actually has kind of a pattern of, and by the way, certainly on a shot like this, there's probably a lot I could accomplish going straight to ink and paint. I'm doing a more proper pencil test specifically because what I found, here's the thing, all of these creative activities like animation or music or anything like that, let me check this last frame. Okay, is he moving? No, he doesn't move. I know, I just interrupted myself and lost my train of thought. Hey, Maria. Well, I hope you get the meditative benefit of listening at low volume. my soft voice, hopefully, is wilting you off to sleep, if that was the goal. Anyway, a lot of these creative things that we can do, as I said, creating a piece of music, doing a piece of art, animation, they consist of a wide range of skills and dimensions and aspects that are all working together. But usually the 80-20 rule sort of applies. And there's one thing that if you get that right, everything else is pretty much cake, you know. And that's, to me, what the pencil test is. Increasingly, I'm enjoying really taking the time to make sure the storytelling is happening undeniably at the pencil test stage. And so, you know, and I think that's just generally good advice. It's just care. Now, what I was going to say earlier, and I did interrupt myself, is that I'm not probably going to do much squash and stretch here because of we're at 8 frames a second. However, I'm going to go ahead and try it here. So right here, I'm going to hit the A key and go into liquify mode. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a little bit of recoil on the hat, like that. Because at 8 frames a second, it might just work. The danger is, because 8 frames per second is a fairly slow pace, things that you can do at 12 frames per second, they simply make the action take too long, and so then the effect you were after doesn't really come off. So it's sort of risky behavior, but it's like, okay, we might as well try it. I'm going to turn the arcs layer off, and then I'm just going to select this region right here and let it play loop a few times. Yeah. So there's a couple things you could say here. What I tried to do right there, I did not execute well, okay? However, despite the fact that I put too much movement in there, pretty obviously, I tend to think I'm kind of chasing rainbows here. It's just at 8 frames per second, there's just not really room for some of the more nuanced squash and stretch that I would say at higher frame rates definitely can be beneficial, but not necessarily, life-changingly important. Now, what I'm doing right here is Creative 5 versions give you the ability to paste into the active layer, so I have that map to Control-Shift-V. So Control-V is paste, Control-Shift-V is paste into active layer. So why am I doing that? I'm just taking the hat or the headdress because I know it's correct, and so now I'm just baking it into all of the layers. Now I can save myself some grief here by doing this, right? Just go ahead and take that shape that I know is going to be correct and just keep bopping around with it. Now, to make it easier, I probably should hit Control-C and recopy that to the clipboard. Yeah, okay, so Control-Shift-V, up. Okay, undo. I just hit Control-Z and nothing happened. Okay. A little bit of a scary moment there. One of those moments that those who've been with me for a while know this is where Dave saves his work. So, who's watching today? I know we got 2 people watching. So, you guys could okay, here's what I'm going to do. You know, I haven't been live streaming And so I'll pose the question this way. Have you missed me? And if you have, what I'm curious about is why? What is it? What is it about, the way I live stream or whatever that you've missed? And if you haven't, if you're like indifferent and it's like, well, okay, it's nice that you're here today, but that's cool too. No agenda here, friends. I'm just kind of curious what people might sort of be tuning in for, I guess. Let's see. So now this is a little redundant. I mean, strictly speaking, I don't have to do what I'm doing right here. No, this is actually where turning on the onion skins isn't the worst idea in the world, because then I can see the ghost of the previous one that I'm actually just duplicating here in order to get it in the right place. Now, if you were dealing with Krita 4 and prior, then what you would have done, and it's arguably a better technique, is you'd put this little fix that I'm adding, you just put it in another layer, and then when you get it all dialed in, you go ahead and just bake the layer down. So this, okay, so he's moving around quite a bit. So Control-Shift-V. Okay, well that, somehow I managed to get a bunch of his face in there. Something, I guess I'll just say that when you have a selection and you move it and then you recopy it to the clipboard, it looks like the selection process is a little dicey. Like you might want to just reselect to make sure if you're going to be doing what I'm doing here, Okay, save our work. Save. Mecha animation. How come you haven't dropped a finished animation? Mecha animation. How come you haven't dropped a finished animation? Well, I take it you're not aware of the TV show Salt and Light, right? So can you answer that question? Let's have a little interaction here. Are you aware of Salt and Light and what that is? Mecha animation? And Maria, thanks for the comment. I appreciate that. The calm conversational way of teaching. Now that's interesting because I'm waiting for Mecha Animation to tell me if he's aware, he or she, of course, is aware of Salt and Light, and not getting an answer here. So maybe they connected but then left or something. Well, yeah, it looks that way because we just dropped to one concurrent view. It looks like it's just you and me, Maria. So, well, it is interesting that a great deal of my journaling and thought process in recent times, okay, that's not going to work, has really circled much more around developing my, if you want to call it, a theory of everything. And I'm very fortunate that I have the luxury of being able to waste time thinking about such things. But, there have been, and a lot of this has been coincidental with the development of Salt and Light too. This theory of everything that I'm referring to, I've been thinking about for about 3 years, somewhere between 2 and 3 years. And it's much more important to me. Frankly, I'm in the process of sort of getting serious about allowing some of the content here to drift more in that direction. Makes me wonder if the thing to do, because this is, that's a pretty big claim, a theory of everything, right? So it sounds ludicrous. And yet it's been not only profound, but I would say pretty much life-changing. So it has been. So I want to talk about that. So, we'll see how it evolves. I may like record my animation work, but then actually play it back and narrate over it or something. Okay. I got to look at Salud's dialogue. So yeah, that might be if the content. I'm pulling up the script of the show on the other screen. Okay. So he says, going back so soon as he says, so how was the wedding? Oh, I'm sure it was just marvelous to see the young prince. And then Golek interrupts him. So okay, let me look at my timing here. So how was the wedding? Okay, let's just go ahead and let's put the lip sync, the mouth shapes in there. Just, it's something to do, and it does have to be done. So I want to look. Let me check something here on the live stream. Check. Okay. Everything seems to be in order. So looking at the script, I actually almost feel like it's practically mandatory that I do sort of come out with this theory of everything because frankly, I have a hard time believing what I'm doing here on its own merits is really actually that interesting. Oh, I wanted to share something about Krita. So I'll try to spit this out relatively quickly. Just for those who might use Krita or want to for animation. Okay, so in version 5 was a big step over version, hey Sifter, over version 4. I don't use the latest version, which I think is 5.1.5, because I believe it was 5.1.4 introduced the new fill tools. And just long story short is there were a lot of new bugs and altered behavior introduced in Krita 5.1.4 that some aspects you can adapt to and others are kind of deal busters, okay? So for me, I'm still using 5.0.2. This has been the most stable and feature complete version that I've probably ever been able to use reliably and consistently over a period of time without annoying bugs. However, I want to say that there was one aspect of the entire Krita 5 series that I've complained about in the past that I solved the other day. So Krita versions 4 would play and stop. I don't remember if it. Yeah, I guess you'd hit the space bar to play and then hit it again to stop. And then the W key was the key I used, probably because that's the hotkey in Vegas and Reaper. So but anyway, the W key would rewind. So what Krita called that in the settings was first frame. Okay, so I had noted, and by the way, this was noted on various forums in different places, where more than one person had observed that in the entire time that Krita 5 has been out, that hotkey has not worked. It doesn't matter what key you assign to it, it just doesn't work. Well, what I figured out the other day, this is so stupid, but it took 2 years to figure this out, is that when you hit play in Krita and then you hit the spacebar again, it pauses. Okay, it doesn't rewind. Now, there was a period there in the early 5 versions where if you hit shift spacebar, it would rewind. And then that quit working with 5.1.4 as near as I could tell. Anyway, the solution is simple. The setting is not first frame. It's actually stop. If you hit, so now what I do is spacebar plays and pauses, and then to rewind, I actually stop. So obviously, I should think if you hit play and then I hit the space or the W key, it actually stops and returns to where it started. So the only caveat with the whole idea of rewinding is if you start in the middle, let me double check this. I think this is right. Okay, I pause. Now I hit W. See, it goes back to where you started, not the actual beginning. If I hit W again, it goes back to the beginning. So it's like, okay, you know, you wouldn't think such a little thing, you know, having to use your mouse or whatever to press buttons would be a big deal. But when you're doing, you know, an entire freaking TV show worth of animation by yourself, little things like that can be really snap you out of the creative and motivated frame of mind, you know. So anyway, I was really happy that I was able to figure that out. Especially when you're doing lip sync, being able to navigate reliably is just massively huge. So anyway, what I said was, before I interrupted myself yet again, I think what I said is I was going to go ahead and nail the lip sync on this little section, which means I got to look at the dialogue. Okay, so he says, "Lord Golek, back so soon." That happens before we get to this shot. And here he says, So, how was the wedding? Okay, so that's what the dialogue is. Let me look at this. Okay, just so you guys know, if you notice here, I'm not seeing any keyframes in the mouth layer, which tells me I must have baked the lip sync into the pencil test. Okay. I guess that makes sense, because probably when I created the mouth layer, I was thinking the finished version of the mouth, not the sort of pencil tested version. Well, I don't care. I'm going to go ahead and put the lip sync on this layer. Okay, so just to get the timing, what I'll do is just make a selection of this section right here. Now you could right mouse click, I think up here. Nope, I guess right here. Update playback range. I mean, I've got that mapped to Control Alt Shift Q. So when I really, really am sure I want to do it, that's how I do it. I'm going to do it. You know, just lock in a range of frames and stay there for a while. You don't have to keep waiting for the animation cache. Okay, so now with one caveat, however, I need the so in there. So, boop. It's funny, I don't know my own hotkeys. So, okay, right there. So I think here we'll hint at the H. And I'm having to press slightly because this brush, like I think I said at the beginning, what this brush does is sketch, 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 and press a little harder, instant ink. It's quite useful in some circumstances, but as I think I said earlier, the jury's out on whether it's really a productivity enhancement. Point being, I actually prefer to just be drawing the red, and I'd have to edit the brush. I just don't want to do that right now. Okay, key thing here, by the way, to notice in Krita, at least 5.0.2, as far as I know, don't quote me on this, but I don't think, okay, roll back. In version 4X, whatever version of 4, if you either drew into a frame, Krita would create a new frame. So you see, well, okay, I have to stop. I just drew, sorry guys, I just drew the mouths in the pencil test layer. Okay. Sir, I don't understand how you can be so stupid. Well, let's just say I've had a lot of practice. Okay. What I'm trying to say is that in Krita 5, the expected behavior of creating a new frame when you just start drawing into a frame, I have observed yesterday, I kind of tested it a bit, and it's kind of dicey. It actually doesn't matter. Let me see here. Hold on a second. I may have just discovered the source of the issue. Okay. Actually, Sifter, do you know anything about this? Are you here? Let me look. I gotta move my screens around. Okay. So the issue I'm highlighting here is that you set up Krita to auto key and then it doesn't happen. So which means you know, if I jump to this frame and start drawing something, it actually just goes into the, so I'm going to jump to the mouth layer. Let's just see what happens here. Okay, let's go forward to where we need to be. Okay, and let's just say it's there. Now, if I start drawing in this layer, oops, I'm in erase mode. So I'm just going to draw that just to put something there. Okay, so now it looks like Krita did the right thing. It created a frame automatically. This setting is kind of important in terms of what you want to do. Now, what I noticed here while I'm live streaming is that when you click on this little icon, it changes. And I think I might have actually had the auto keying turned off and didn't know it. So I'm going to make sure it's on because a moment ago it worked. Okay, so now you can decide whether you want to do auto key blank or auto key duplicate. It just depends on what you want to do. If you're blitzing through and just really just loose scribbling of a pencil test just to get the feel and the motion, you probably want auto key blank because you want to just go to the next frame and start just doodling, and you don't want to have to take the moment to erase what was there before. If you do auto key duplicate, then what it's going to do is leave everything that was currently in the frame, and now you're adding to it. So they both have their uses for sure. So I think Sifter's confirming that. I just have to confess, this may in fact be a problem I've had throughout my life with Krita 5 that I did not realize that in this mode right there, auto keying's turned off completely. So true confession, folks, I may have screwed up on that one. So I would say this, when I'm, especially if I'm doing ink and paint, auto key duplicate's going to usually be better because then I can go to a frame and, you know, maybe make some small change, but basically have, you know, the earlier character there in the new frame automatically, right, without having to cut and paste it, blah, blah, blah. So I think you guys get it. Okay, so I'm going to erase that. So anyway, my results on that auto key thing were mixed. Yesterday, what's strange is I don't remember ever ticking this at all, and yet it was behaving erratically where it wasn't creating keys like you would think it would. So actually, let's try that this way too, because the other thing I was going to say is I had experience with Krita 5 where using the animate tool had stopped creating an automatic key, which is really annoying. So I'm going to hit the A key and move this and see if, yeah, so thank you, Sifter, for confirming that. This is my own stupid fault. Apparently I had auto keying turned off and didn't know it. It's a subtle little tiny change in that icon, especially when you have 56-year-old eyes like I do. So anyway, this is good news. I keep bumping into things that turn out with a little effort that Krita maybe isn't as boogered up as I tend to accuse it of being sometimes. Okay, back to work, friends. Just checking. Okay, Sifter said you got it. Okay, cool. All right, so he said, how was the wedding? Okay, that's the line. Boy, it's taken me a long time to get to this, hasn't it? So he does the double blink. Okay, yes, that's right. So it was here. And I wanted to tease the beginning of the line here. So I'm just going to pretend I'm doing ink. Okay, and now this should be auto key blank, as you guys will see here, auto key blank. So what should happen is it'll automatically create the key, but it'll delete the previous ink. And it did. Oh, good. Wait, well, we'll see when I stop moving. Okay, worked. Nice. Not exactly happy with the way I drew it. So. Okay, I like that. That looks like salute to me. Okay, so cool. It's always nice when we can sort of figure things out and solve problems as opposed to be draggled by them. I'm just going to go ahead and color this in just for kicks and giggles. Boop. Okay, so he says, how? Okay, how the word was is going to be, I don't know. I'm just gonna wing it here. I'm doing every second frame because we're at 8 frames per second, and I'm gonna go ahead and hit insert to just create the blank keyframe. That's been my normal practice. I guess my normal practice has usually been to auto key a duplicate, and then I was used to just hitting insert if I wanted a blank frame, and that works pretty well. So the truth of the matter is, friends, again, other than if you're doing a really fast, loose, just blocking in an animation, you're just moving really fast. Other than that, generally, probably for me, auto keying should be the duplicate frame, not the blank. Just because I am used to hitting insert. Okay, so Sifter had a question. How come the naming convention is different in both tabs? You talking about the file names in the tabs? Bit of a random question. Well, no, that's a fair question. Okay, so up through Salt and Light episodes 1 and 2, all the scenes were packaged together because it really was a 2-part single episode, really. So then all of the scenes were named like 0010 would be scene 10. It might be 3 frames. I have to think. I'm pretty sure. I gotta slow down. I think it's 4 digits because on a show or a movie you can easily get past 999 scenes. So I'm sure it was 4 digits. So 0011 would be scene 11. With episode 3, what I did was created a subfolder in the scenes folder called episode 3, and just so I can go to that one folder and all the scenes for that episode are there. Okay. So then within episode 3, it looks like I did 2 digits, which I probably should have done 3, but so this is episode 3, shot 26. This really has nothing to do with that naming convention because this is separate from the scenes, actually. I mean, this is the storyboard. So is that answering your question, or am I answering something like wasn't what you were asking? I will say the most important thing anyone could learn from me about that is that I am very, very rigorous about naming conventions. Because when you have this many scenes, you just have to have a methodology where you just intuitively know what folder to go to find what you're looking for. I've made mistakes crafting that system, so sometimes I do still lose track of things. But I'm not like some people I've known where they constantly don't even know where they saved anything and, give them stupid names because they're in a hurry and things like that. So that's the best answer I think I can give for that question. So he says, I'm actually going to go ahead and do this again. Yeah, okay, so we'll extend this. Control, Shift, Alt, Q. I have no idea why I picked that. Hotkey. Probably because it requires 4 fingers, and it's something you only do very occasionally. Okay, I think that was the mindset there. So I'm talking about the hotkey of Shift, Control, Alt, Q, which I have mapped to this function. Like, you're working on a long animation and you need to just work on this area. Well, update the playback range. So now you're just working with that area. So it's quite useful. Frankly, I haven't used it a lot, but I'm seeing here where I may be using it more. Okay, so anyway. Where were we before I so rudely interrupted myself? And just for completeness, let me note that the W key, which is the stop key, does only return to the whatever your first frame is. It doesn't sort of think for you and do the dumb thing, and if you hit it twice, go ahead and go back to frame 0 no matter what. There was a version of Krita where that happened. I remember it, and it drove me bananas. Anywho. Okay, so he's saying, how was the wedding? Okay, yeah. So what we want to do is have this, make sure we're on the mouth layer. So he says, how was the... So at 8 frames per second, this is just how I do it. It tends to work well when you see it in the show, is just 2 frames per phoneme, unless there's a natural pause and they're extending the word and you want to extend it out. Frankly, I've gone back and forth on using anime style lip sync now that I think of it. For a while there, I was definitely endorsing that. So, with anime, you have something that's like small open, almost close, large open, almost close, close. I think that was what it is. It's basically 5 steps, and if you just play those same 5 steps over and over, it doesn't matter what the person's saying. It looks like they're saying it, and that's how anime is. So I've done a lot of lip sync on Salt and Light that way, but right now I'm kind of thinking about the phonemes as I go. I just, I don't think the audience really cares how I do it, right? So, okay, so this is the. I'm just going to keep this simple. I'm now going to solo that layer and hit the F key to fill. Oops, can't do that. So this brush, if I put it at black, okay, that worked. You can see this if you look really close. I've always thought this is strange. I need to really look at the code or the setting on the brush, because there really is no reason why it should still be giving me ghosting of red when I'm when my actual selected color is black. I suspect that has something to do with a curve on pressure being mapped to saturation. I think that's what it is. And maybe Creed is saying, lacking a better idea, if you're actually selected black, maybe a less saturated version of black would be whatever the color was you were using before you switched to black. Or it might be, maybe it's a transition. No, it can't be a transition from foreground to background. Yeah, it's definitely mysterious. But anyway, hardly the end of the world, right? Ba-dum-bum, ba-dum-bum. Okay, so this should be, okay, did he move there? He did move there. Okay, so actually what we should do here, this is where I'm watching closely. Did you create a key? Oh, it did. Very, very good. Okay, Krita 5.0.2 is really behaving well. I'm getting along with Krita today. Okay, so this is supposed to be wedding. So I'm going to hit insert to go ahead and manually insert a blank keyframe. And he's saying wedding. All right, and I'm just going to keep, as I said, my default, as you can see, my default is create a duplicate frame for the auto frame creation. Brushes usually use green or red when the saturation changes on black from my experience. Isn't that strange? I assume that's unique to Krita, right? That's really weird. That's a bug in the code. I guess. Or a very strange, preference as to what the default behavior should be. A little odd. But see, what I do is if I hit Control-Alt-M, it automatically invokes the color to alpha. So Control-Alt-M, and then see, and that gets rid of any red, and then I hit Control-M, and my default here is cleanup, which takes the alpha and clamps it, I'm sorry. Okay, and some people might complain if this then looks a little more stair-steppy than they are comfortable with. But in practice, at actual size, you can't see the stair-stepping, and if that's a problem for you, just apply a 1-pixel blur to your whole, you know, high contrast ink. And there's a big reason for that. There's actually a huge reason to clamp your ink lines to pixelated early in the process. And the reason is your fills will be massively more reliable. When you have a clean non-anti-alias line, or we would say an alias line, it's all, you know, stair-steppy, you're going to get perfect fills every time. And so there you go. So to have a highly clamped ink job and then just add a 1-pixel blur to it as the final step, or even add a filter, a filter mask with a 1-pixel blur and just leave it off most of the time until you're ready to render. So, whoops. So the only disadvantage of Krita 5.0.2 versus the everything after 5.1.4, which is, I believe, where the new fill tools were introduced. For me, I don't need the new fill tools. I played with them. They're definitely good, no problem. But the main application for me would probably have to do with using the lasso for flatting, okay? But I don't do flatting that way. I do flatting the way I saw Ed Tadeo. One time I was watching a speed paint that Ed Tadeo did, and I'm looking really close and I couldn't figure out how is he isolating his colors so he can just paint in an area and, you know, basically protect the background from overlaps or coloring outside the lines. I said, Ed, is this what you're doing? And he said, yes, that's what I'm doing. Well, here's what he was doing. What he was doing was just adding another layer and then doing a fill operation on everything except the character. And when you do that, if there's any leaks in your ink, you'll see immediately, because in this case they would be filled with red. So it acts as an ink check tool. Obviously you have to hit the fill tool on every animated frame, but then just put this layer in erase mode like that, and it effectively serves, you know, it gives you the ability, if you really want flatted imagery to just sort of test your animation pre-color, then you just put a solid gray layer underneath all the other layers, and that's what'll show through underneath the ink, because the erase layer is keeping, you know, protecting your background, if you will. So I found that to be pretty much just as effective as going in and, you know, doing a bunch of lasso flatting. You know, it's 6 of one, half dozen the other to me. So anyway, Sifter says you can make your pencil aliased right away if you change the sharpness settings. I do. Well, okay, that's a great. I'm glad you said that, Sifter, because that calls for some clarification. Okay, number one. Let me go back to the mouth layer just for lack of a better idea here. Okay, number one, to a degree that is happening. So watch. Watch when I press hard. You'll see that the line does get thinner. So the line actually thins out when it goes into ink mode. It's probably crumping down to about 3 pixels there. Well, you can see that it is actually. However, you're right, it is not anti-aliased. Here's why I will probably not implement your suggestion. Key reason. Not that there would be any harm in it, okay? But here's what happens. When I hit Control-Alt-M to invoke the color to alpha, if I do not run a clamp operation on the alpha channel, what's actually going on here, and you can see it faintly, actually, you can see a little bit of green there. Okay, so what happens is color to alpha gets rid of my red lines, but it is not clean. And if I tried to do a fill operation on, say, this shape with this line inside of it, you would not get a clean fill. So what it turns out, you always need to do the second cleanup operation. So for me, it isn't that the goal is to have anti-aliased ink lines, because most of the time I actually don't. It's just worth mentioning to people that it's not a problem if you do, because in fact, if you take this to its extreme, I'll show you how well this actually works. So we can go ahead and turn that into a good old school stair step ink line. Okay. Well, filter blur, Alt B, by the way. Look at that. That's what a 1-pixel blur does. It's like perfect. And if you didn't think it was perfect, you can always tighten it back up again. You know? So anyway, because the second step of completely getting rid of the red is a necessary step, for that reason, I don't it's not that big of a deal to make the brush fully aliased, if you will. Sometimes I want a little more control and softness on my lines anyway. So anyway, that's a really insightful statement / question you made there. Okay. What's the wedding? Okay, this, I think I altered this, yes, on a different frame. Whoops. Sorry, that should have been in erase mode. Okay, back to my brush. Not erase mode, silly. Okay. So I want to give him a little bit more happy. This is the end of the word wedding. So let's do it that way. So I think he says, how was the wedding? Okay, this right here, I'm not sure what I was thinking. It's debatable whether that keyframe's even needed. I think I'm going to just put this here. In other words, I'm pissing in the wind trying to articulate the W, the wedding. It's pointless. It all goes by too fast, and it's just making the lip sync look overdone, if you will. So, how's the wedding? So, how's the wedding? Okay, now this wants to be here, and I'm going to just speculate that maybe a frame there would be good. So we're just massaging the lip sync here for a moment. There's one additional keyframe that's bugging me, or in other words, I think I have one key too many. Yeah, right there. Okay, so his words. Oh yeah, this is actually too late. And so I said, so I don't know, I think we've got a cluster of lip sync phonemes here that are overdone. This is one of those laborious moments that probably makes people scream at their screen when they're watching me do it, because I really have to like play it over and over and really think about what I'm seeing. For those who might wonder about audio, like why aren't you lip syncing to an audio track? I have no problem with doing that, and can be quite effective. Obviously, on Fan Futurama, that is what I'm doing. On Salt and Light, I've never done that. I just kind of know what the people say. Plus, I mean, I do all the voices anyway, other than Maria's and Natalie, the two girl voices. So, for that reason, I just typically use anime style lip sync, and it just works. Okay, so this keyframe, first of all, needs to be much bigger. And actually, let's go ahead and let his teeth sneak in there. Why not? Or you could argue that's his tongue, but so. Yeah, that's definitely better. Okay, except this. You see what we have here. I actually think what I should do here is just erase this and let him shut his mouth for a frame. Could be wrong, but what's the wedding? It's close. Yeah, there's. Yep, right there. Yeah, that one is definitely not working. So you have the same problem here. Whoops, that needs to be in erase mode. I'm going to take it out. Well, I mean, and it's a little different at 12 frames per second, but I will say at 8, the rule is less is more typically with lip sync. All right. Okay, so he says, oh, I added the so in there. How was the wedding? Okay, this feels like it wants to be a little later. Ba-da-ba-ba-da. Yes. Ba-da-ba-ba-da. Ba-da. Yeah, this actually, I don't know, but this feels like it should actually chop that off. Lip sync should never be smooth anyway unless it's 3D. Otherwise it gives off a cheap look, which is counterintuitive. I don't have a strong opinion about that because I really haven't been fiddling with CG for a long time. But I mean, my personal take on the CGI animated movies I've seen is that usually the lip sync's still pretty loose, loosey goosey, especially in the Pixar stuff. Nope, that was wrong. I was wrong about this. What happens if we go there? Did he move? Okay, let me see. Let me see something here. How was the wedding? Okay, the first shape I'm not happy with. It's too subtle. Too subtle, friends. You've been partaking in animator island critiques and such lately, and the emphasis and he emphasizes how important the closed mouth is in lip sync. Yeah, we're kind of experiencing that here in real time, aren't we? How was the wedding? Yeah, I think we're there. Other than, I mean, let me see here. I guess we don't actually need this key at all. And then this just doesn't look like the right shape for somebody saying the word how. So, hey Tom. Time is at 2. Wow, so I've been streaming for, that looks like it's an hour, friends. Looks like it's an hour. All right, W. How was the wedding? Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Okay, so unfortunately for those who want to move on to other things than lip sync, there's kind of a lot of lip sync still to do. Okay, so what I'm going to do, let's see here. Oh yeah, so we get here. All right, so I guess what we'll do is just make that the playback range, because we actually have 2 shots in one here in a sense, because I did a jump cut. Hey Sifter, see you later, man. Thanks for stopping by today. goodness, my hair has become utterly out of control. I don't actually think I've ever had my hair this long. When I was 16, it was close. It was close. But okay. So let's insert a keyframe. And then, now this seems a little misguided. We probably need to finish the pencil test before we start dinking around with the lip sync here. Okay, so do we want to cheat? If we're going to cheat, we're going to go here, select this, paste it in here, Control-Shift-V into the active layer, so that we can go ahead and just scale this up. I mean, I would say 9 times out of 10, if not more, this is the right thing to do. Don't kill yourself redrawing something that's strictly not necessary. Not to take anything away from the value of, you know, doing a lot of drawing, right? Obviously. So, my nose is itching, friends. Let's see here. How's the wedding? Okay, yeah. So he launches right into the lip sync. But what does he say? Okay, I see. All right, cool. Do we need to tighten this up? Not really. I mean, scaling up doesn't matter in a pencil test, right? Doesn't hurt a thing. So, allergy season is starting here in the Northeast, pollen. Yeah, for sure. Yep. Okay. So what he does, so I think what I'm going to do, I'm just going to hedge my bets here. And I'm going to assume that probably everything in the head region, since we're doing the lip sync separately, can probably be reused. So I'm going to hit Control-C. Okay, and Control-Shift-V. And what I'm going to do is anchor down here so we get kind of a natural change there. Now I said earlier, to be safe, you want to recopy to the clipboard. Control-Shift-V. So he's basically saying, oh, I bet it was just wonderful seeing the prince and blah, 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 blah. And then, of course, Golic shuts him up. Okay, and Control-Shift-V. Now the catch here. So, and by the way, you know, the point here in cheating is not really to avoid drawing, but to impose some structure that's going to be, that can be relied upon as the animation evolves. So it's not like clean continuity on these lines matters. All that matters is that it convincingly sells the motion. And the reality is, Richard Williams makes this point in his book, the what is it, Animator Survival Kit? Of course, Richard passed away a couple years ago, finally. Is that squash and stretch is kind of overrated. I think maybe because sort of in the lexicon of talking about animation, the Disney guys tended to talk a lot about squash and stretch. Of course it's important, and of course it's a very useful tool. Williams' point was simply that in the general case, the same animation with and without squash and stretch tends to actually work just as well and sometimes better without the squash and stretch. At 8 frames per second, you don't have a lot of opportunity to do squash and stretch. Everything's just too choppy, you know. And the reason you don't is because you've got about 1 frame of latitude, okay? Meaning that if you were to have one anticipatory frame, like here's a good example. I'll go ahead and do it. Like you could bring this drawing to life a little bit. by just putting a little tiny movement in there. Okay? So you just have this little tiny wiggle of life, right? Not saying it's necessarily important, but you could have one frame of anticipation. What you can't do, let's see, he goes, boom, he snaps back. So what you can't do is stuff like this, like hit the A key, and let's go ahead and liquefy this, okay? And so then we go boink like that, and then we presumably would want it to recoil to here, but maybe not exactly in the same spot, kind of thing. So you get something like this, and at 8 frames per second, as you can see, not saying I did the greatest job on it, but it doesn't really matter, because the problem is that the squash and stretch, or the recoil, it just takes too many frames, so the whole thing happens so slowly that it doesn't look cool. If you did the same thing at 12 frames per second, so again, it's still not executed that well because I'm kind of hurrying here, but you can do it. You can get away with it. And in point of fact, on balance, let's see here. Yeah, on balance, I would say that 12 frames per second is actually quite a lot more forgiving than 8 frames per second. It's, potentially more frames to draw if you're doing a lot of important, detailed action. But anyway, the point here being that this squash and stretch reaction stuff, there's just not time for it to happen. 1 frame you can get away with. If you really wanted to have him settle just a bit and leave it at that, that would be okay. But anyway, yeah, so 8 frames per second animation is a little different beast than 12. As you can see, I totally botched the characterization in this frame. So let's see if we're still on the clipboard. Ooh, we are. Okay, so I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to move this over here, hit G and E, erase this guy. Better turn on the onion skin so I can see what his position was. And now we can take this. And he's supposed to be deflated. So I'm going to go ahead and give him 1 frame here of liquefied the face falls. Okay, so B key, turn the onion skins back off, and now we'll zoom in here and see what we're really wanting to do with this. Okay, we're still in erase mode, so I'm just going to go ahead and put the Alright, and then if you really love the liquefy tool, what you can do is make a selection like this. And only the selection will be affected. Kind of slick. Okay, let's check of the motion. I like it. That actually made me laugh. This is one of my goals lately when I've been animating is I always hope that at some point the motion will crack me up. Keeps things fun. What time is it? 2:14. Actually, I see Valerie behind me, and I think I want to go and fellowship with my love buggy. So with that, I think I'll go ahead and end the live stream. It's been a good little over an hour. Haven't been live streaming in a while, but I am starting to get back into working on Salt and Light. So we'll see what the how the distribution aspects of it turn out. I would expect to be getting some sales-oriented news um, this month, actually. So we'll see. But anyway, so let's see here. What made you decide? Anything specific or spur of the moment? And by the way, thanks for your comment, Tom. You mean to live stream? It was spur of the moment because, like yesterday, I started working on this scene, and I'm like, okay, I'm just sitting here animating again. I'm sort of back in the saddle, so I might as well live stream because why not? And plus things have been going pretty well with Krita. Like I'm not here to rant, and I hope I don't. I don't. If my live streaming devolves back into that, I'm probably gonna pull back again. So anyway, that's the story on that. No big thing. So, all right, guys, I'm out of here. And as you know, as I like to say, there will be more later.